This is the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris DeGaulle.
Chris DeGaulle. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Monday, the 28th day of August. I thank you so much for downloading the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. I appreciate you being here. I know that there are a gazillion podcasts that you could download and be listening to instead. I know that everybody seems to be doing a podcast these days, so it's not lost on me that you spend time with me, sincerely. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for downloading this show, because you don't have to, and I know there are others. So, and constantly every day, gazillions more launching, so thanks for thinking enough of the show to stop by. I hope it's a good one for you day in and day out. I think today, this one is going to be I'm calling this a thinker of a Monday. I noticed something over the weekend that intrigued me. When you see two people like Bernie Sanders and Sarah Palin saying, in my opinion, something similar, they would never say that about one another, but in my opinion, I detect something interesting happening. It also dovetails nicely with Oliver Anthony, who continues to be kind of the seminal song of the populist movement, the working class movement in this country, his Rich Men North of Richmond. Some interesting things transpired over the weekend, and I wanted to share them with you and kind of lay it out a little bit. I also got an email from a gentleman in West Texas, frustrated as all hell with me about his perceived lack of, understanding of why Trump is so hated and why somebody like DeSantis makes more sense. He likes the show. He's not hostile, but he wrote me a very thoughtful piece about why he thinks I really ought to get my mind right about DeSantis. And so I want to unpack that a little bit and address that here. And we'll do that coming up. And, of course, some other news headlines of the day. So sit tight. John Ruhlman is the guy that makes the show possible, though, every day. And you talk about somebody who's not only supported the show, but supports you. If you buy your own health insurance, you know what a monthly premium costs. You know how expensive it can be. If you're buying your whole family's health insurance and paying that premium out of pocket, it's excruciating. Every month you're talking about maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars. You know, young people like my sons, for instance, as they go out and they get their first jobs, I talk with them about health insurance. You know, they're young and healthy men, young men, and I say, you get a health insurance premium, pay just pennies on the dollar, really. It's not bad. And if, God forbid, you ever get in an accident or you get sick and you should be hospitalized, there are insurance programs John's told me about that will pay you money if you're ever hospitalized and taken off the field for a stretch of time. Now, if you're you got a family of 4, 5, 6, and you're buying your own health insurance premiums, particularly if you have special health needs, that's a fortune. John has personally helped a friend of mine, family of 4, find a better health insurance premium that got them better coverage and saved them $2,000 a month. Seniors, same deal. If you buy a supplemental income to your Medicare, you're on a set income, lowering that monthly premium for that extra additional health insurance plan, that's meaningful money in your pocket. So please call him. Give him a couple of seconds. Tell him about or if you're a small business, I should say too, small business people who buy your employees' health insurance, please call John and run your plan by him. He knows 80 different private insurers across the country, so he will find you at least equal, usually better coverage, and always cheaper, like 30 to 60% cheaper. How's that sound? It starts with one phone call, 877-410-4321, 877-410-4321, or the website usmedicalplan.com. My conversation with John at my website, chrisstegall.com. Tracking, how do you say this? Idalia? Is that what they're saying? Idalia? Idalia, the tropical depression they say could be gaining hurricane strength soon. I got a friend monitoring in the Gulf. I can bring you real world on-the-ground reporting there. I said, I'm told that this is historic because every weather event is now historic. He said it was one weather buoy in very shallow water that they're calling the most historic warm waters ever. Washington Post is already prepping you, just in case this hurricane should get destructive, that this is the warmest water that a hurricane has ever formed under or over. And when I text my friend this, are you all alarmed down there that this is the warmest waters ever? And he said it's one shallow water buoy that they took those metrics off of that's already been totally discredited and debunked, Stigall. I said, okay, good to know. So they're not sweating. In fact, he's still bunkered down waiting to see how this thing develops. Right now, they're still calling it a tropical depression. So hasn't even grown to hurricane yet. But we'll let you know. Oliver Anthony has given an interview about his song Rich Men North of Richmond, and he is not happy. Bet you didn't see this coming. Oliver Anthony is not pleased with last week's development when the Republicans, when Fox News kicked off. You know, I commended Fox for actually starting that debate in a way that I thought was attuned, at least, to where the country was. They played a montage of, they were up there in Milwaukee, so they played a montage of Wisconsinites talking about their economic struggles. They went down the laundry list of economic problems, inflation and whatnot that Biden had caused, Bidenomics. I thought this was a really promising start. And then they played Oliver Anthony's song, Rich Men North of Richmond, and asked the Republicans to respond to it. What does it all mean? I thought it was a powerful start to the debate. Of course, I remind you, it ended with UFOs, but it started nice. As for Oliver, he didn't care for this, not even a little bit, and said so.
It's aggravating seeing people on conservative news try to identify with me like I'm one of them. It's aggravating seeing certain musicians and politicians act like we're buddies and act like we're fighting the same struggle here, like that we're trying to present the same message. You know, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and I've tried to be polite to everybody, and I've talked to hundreds of people the last 2 weeks. But it seems like certain people want to just ride the attention of this song to maybe make them their own selves relevant, and that's aggravating as hell. The other thing that I find aggravating is, well, you know, like, it was funny seeing my song in the, it was funny seeing it at the presidential debate. Because it's like, I wrote that song about those people, you know? So for them to have to sit there and listen to that, that cracks me up. But it was funny kind of seeing the response to it. Like, that song has nothing to do with Joe Biden, you know? It's a lot bigger than Joe Biden. That song is written about the people on that stage, and a lot more too, not just them, but definitely them.
Uh-oh. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why, you know, I got a thoughtful but admonishing note over the weekend yet again from someone who's a regular listener that said it's time for me to snap out of it. It's time for me to understand that why the figures on that debate stage are people that I should get my hands around, and why Trump's yesterday's news and I should abandon any notion of supporting him. And I have tried very, very hard to recognize that there are a lot of you that feel that way. I understand. But as Oliver Anthony's, as far as he's concerned, that was not exactly a ringing endorsement for anyone on that stage. Now, that is not to imply that I necessarily think he was going at any one of them in particular, but he said the collective. And I'm not sure he doesn't include Trump in that. I'm not sure he's not just mad as hell at the whole damn thing. I don't know. From what he just said there in those comments, I don't know that there's an endorsement he'd make. But he was also quick to say he didn't want these mainstream musicians embracing him either. That takes him off. He said, leave me alone. Basically, I'm not any of you. I don't want you corrupting and compromising my song and my identity and the message I had for the people that are actually out there struggling. I don't want you using me, and I'm not going to be used. So he doesn't want it. He doesn't want the association. He's still mad. He feels righteously indignant about the state of affairs in this country, and he's not going to be misappropriated by any of them, including the Republicans on stage. And as long as guys like that continue to say things like that, this is what I was saying last week, and this is not saying that, you know, Trump's your answer. I'm just saying that people that tell me, move on from Trump, it's one of these people on the stage, guys like Oliver Anthony don't see it that way. He doesn't trust any of them. Now, I don't know where that leaves us because all you can do is vote for and you play the hand you're dealt. I mean, it's, I don't know. We've reached out. I don't know how many conversations or interviews he's actually granted or given or will be given. I don't know what he knows about anything. I don't know if he cares about politics. We don't know. He wrote a song that connected with people. And he's right. I mean, he's hoisted up as the Grand Marshal of the Conservative Parade now. Who the hell is he? We don't know. We don't know what he believes. We don't know what his politics, if any, are. I don't know that he knows anything about government and how it works. He may not care. And that's not a small matter. I mean, the song connects, but again, we do tend to do this a lot on our side. We did this with Kanye for a time, too. And we know where things ended up there. So, one moment in time, one song. I've always said that you can take these things and make them useful when they're useful. But I don't know who this guy is, and I don't know what he wants or if he wants anything at all other than to just write a great song that he hopes connects with people and leave it at that. He may have no time for politics at all, and that's where he and I will part. Because he may be one of these guys that's just content to snipe from the sidelines and say they're all corrupt bastards and none of us are going to do any good underneath them. And so what? Does he not vote? Does he not participate? Does he not have an opinion? Does he like RFK? He might. We don't know. And if he does, well. Meanwhile, not to continue to belabor this point, but I do have to say this friend of mine who's been telling me for a while that I should not ignore the cultural significance of Barbie. Did you see this? This movie is now the largest film Warner Brothers has ever produced in the history of their movies. Like in the 100 gazillion years Warner Brothers has been making movies, no movie has ever done better than it. So that's... I have to give credit to my friend for catching something. He finally broke down and he went to see it himself, and he said, I think you're seeing this wrong, Stegall. I think a lot of conservatives are seeing this wrong. I think people need to understand the cultural relevance of it. So there may be some things out of the gate, I would just say culturally, both with Barbie and this Oliver Anthony song and this guy, Oliver Anthony, just... Caution, pump the brakes. In our fervor, in our excitement to jump to conclusions one way or the other, things may not be what they seem. And things may be what we don't understand or might dismiss. Maybe. Just volleying it out there. Meanwhile, over the weekend from the New York Post, the White House counsel's office met with a top aide to Special Counsel Jack Smith. Just weeks before he brought charges against former President Trump for allegedly mishandling classified documents, raising serious concerns about coordinated legal efforts aimed at President Biden's likely opponent in 2024. A guy called Jay Bratt, who joined the special counsel team in November 2022, shortly after it was formed, took a meeting in the White House on March 31st of 2023. That's this year, folks. Took a meeting with somebody called Caroline Saba, S-A-B-A, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff for the White House Counsel's Office. This is according to White House visitor logs. They were joined in the meeting by Daniel Ray, an FBI agent in the Washington field office. 9 weeks later, Trump was indicted by Smith's office. Bratt met with Saba at the White House in November 2021, when Trump was mired in negotiations with the National Archives, who were demanding the return of presidential records. Saba, not an attorney, left the White House in May to attend law school. Bratt had a third meeting in the White House, September 2021, this time with somebody who is an advisor to the White House's chief of staff. The logs offer no information about what was discussed at these meetings. Critics and legal experts question why Bratt was taking meetings at all with the White House counsel's office while part of an active investigation into Biden's likely 2024 Republican opponent. Now, what does this mean? I turn to one of the smartest guys in our game, particularly when it comes to legal matters, and that's Mark Levin. And here's what he said. This is a massive story, and that's why it will be ignored by the Democrat Party media. That said, Bratt not only met with Biden's staff at the White House while investigating Donald Trump and weeks before Trump was charged, Bratt is the senior DOJ official who insisted on securing a warrant and sending a SWAT team to Mar-a-Lago. And Bratt stands accused by somebody called Stanley Woodward, who represents Walt Nauta. That's the guy, Trump's kind of body man down there in Mar-a-Lago. Bratt stands accused by the attorney for Walt Nauta in the documents case of extorting him. Bratt allegedly told Woodward that the judgeship he is seeking has a better chance if his client turns on Trump. Did you know that story? So Trump's, if you're following, I'm sorry, I don't mean to get confusing here. Trump's body man, this Walt Nauta guy who's been indicted on the documents charge down there in Mar-a-Lago, he hired an attorney called Woodward. This guy Bratt in Jack Smith's office went to Woodward, not his attorney, and said, "You want to be a judge, huh? You know what would be helpful to you becoming a judge? Is if you get your guy to flip on Trump." Wow. I mean, these guys are scumbags, straight up. So Levin says Judge Cannon should order, this is Judge Cannon down in Florida, the Trump appointee who will be overseeing the documents case from Mar-a-Lago. Judge Cannon, he says, should order from the bench that all records related to Bratt's meetings and discussions at the White House should be preserved and provided to the court, and she should ask the D.C. judge who's been dragging his feet in his secret review of this allegation against Bratt by Woodward, transfer that matter and all information related to it to her, as it clearly bears importance on the documents case. Yet again, I am forced to ask, says Levin, where the hell are Trump's lawyers? They should file a motion immediately seeking a court order for the information mentioned above and make a big stink about this outrageous news. And let me add another important point, he says. This clearly adds to the overwhelming case for a special counsel, as this not only creates the impression of a conflict of interest, but a conflict of interest in fact. The Biden administration cannot be relied upon to truthfully explain itself. The standard for appointing a special counsel, a qualified lawyer from the outside of government, has been met yet again. And then he says, in classic Levin form, I'm authorizing all you backbenchers on TV and radio to share this. Steal it from me if you want. It's too important. So I said, noted. As a proud backbencher to Mark Levin, I will steal that analysis because I thought it important. And he did too. He wanted you to know that. So this is an enormous story. Biden staffers meeting with special counsel Jack Smith's aides before Trump indictment, as if you had any doubt. Meanwhile, yet another conversation about civil unrest, perhaps civil war. This makes people really mad at people like Sarah Palin, who went on Newsmax and came along and said that the country is in a state she believes that could be driven. This kind of thing could drive us, you know, the Oliver Anthonys of the world, moves like this kind of, well, I shouldn't say moves like this. I should say what you and I have been watching for the better part of several years now, at least, that's just been brazen out in front. You know, our major cities being burned and looted, and then January 6th rolls around, and we're still roping up people like herds of cattle and jailing them, but no meaningful prosecutions after the George Floyd riots and protests. It's that unto itself, and then that set in motion this just kind of brazen double standard. And we see so many on the left who go unprosecuted, from the Bidens to the Clintons and on and on and on. And it makes people start wondering aloud. I brought it up last week, and Sarah Palin kind of wandered into this too. This gives people the vapors. They start to hyperventilate that anybody would entertain it. I don't know how you couldn't entertain it unless you're just sticking your head in the sand.
Do you have concern for the country as I do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think those who are conducting this travesty and creating this two-tier system of justice, I want to ask them, what the heck? Do you want us to be in civil war? Because that's what's going to happen. We're not going to keep putting up with this. And Eric, I like that you suggested that we need to get angry. We do need to rise up and take our country back. Now, I would say the RNC, though, that's what's lacking when it comes to collective anger that can be healthy and it can be useful. Where is the RNC? They hold the purse strings to the party. They hold the funds that could be helping out in this situation. They have the platform, and yet they're too timid. A bunch of freaking rhinos running the thing. So the RNC, they better get their stuff together, or I'll have to ask them too. What do they want as an outcome of this civil war?
Little Oliver Anthony there and Sarah Palin, maybe. Where are the Republicans? They don't seem like they're behaving much differently than Democrats. Is that what they want? Civil war? Bernie Sanders scolds Democrats for losing working class and minority voters to the GOP. It's absurd, he says. Democrats risk losing the 2024 elections if the party continues to lose support among the minority and working class voters, he said in a speech over the weekend. Speaking at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, Sanders urged Democrats to focus on economic issues. He expressed his bewilderment the GOP has support from more working class voters than the Democrat Party does. Frankly, it's absolutely absurd, he says, that given the anti-work ideology and policies of the Republican Party, that the party now has more working class support than Democrats. Similarly, Sanders expressed his concerns that Hispanic and black voters were gravitating toward the Republican Party. You know, I'm going to bring this up, and I'm not sure if there's any merit to it whatsoever, but I am starting to notice it could be completely manufactured. Only time will tell. There seems to be a suggestion on social media that, do I say this? It's not my suggestion. It's plain. If you spend any time on social media, you'll see it yourself. I'm not saying this. I'm saying I'm seeing it. Trump is garnering more black support since he's been arrested and mugshotted. Have you seen this?
I've seen more people highlighted. I've seen this activity on Twitter, yes.
Yeah, just so you know, I'm not making this up. This is not like Stigall floating some, I don't want to be, Mediaite's going to pick this up and say, racist Stigall says blacks like a criminal. That's not what that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I have seen now Trump memes where they've taken the mugshot and made it look like he's wearing cornrows. That's the tightly braided hair. They're having a lot of fun with this. There's a claim, and I don't even know if this video is legit. There's a claim that Trump was driving through while he was going to Fulton County to be mugshotted and fingerprinted and all that stuff, that the motorcade went through, and there's been videos circulating of many black folks in particular, minority neighborhoods, that the motorcade was driving through, allegedly. I can't confirm these things, folks, because it's the internet, and the internet's the worst. And so this could easily be like footage from, 2015. I don't know where it comes from. I can't verify any of it. Who knows? But the claim is it was Trump either on his way to or leaving the Fulton County prison last week. And as he was driving through this primarily minority neighborhood, many black residents in the neighborhood were cheering and jumping up and down and supporting. Do you think there's any merit to that? Let me just ask that way. Do you think there's any merit to the idea that black Americans feel in many ways that they are unjustly persecuted, prosecuted, that the legal system does not have their back, and in fact, many black Americans feel the judicial system has victimized them and their people? And as such, Trump now running as the victim of the legal system might make him more appealing to minorities who feel the same. Do you think there's any merit to that? Just asking, because that's what's floating around out there.
I think in some cases, yes. I don't think it's universal across the board, but yeah, I do.
You think that urban core blacks might look at Trump's mugshot and go, now he knows what we're going through?
I do.
Yeah. Bernie's kind of freaked out about it. I don't know if this is what he means when he says it, but that's what he's freaked out about. It should be deeply worrying, he said, that according to recent polls, Democrats are losing support within the Latino communities and even among African American men. That has got to change, not just for the well-being of the Democrat Party, but for the future of our country. The Democrats once and for all must reject the corporate wing of the party and empower those who will create a grassroots, multiracial, generational, working-class party in every state of the country. Democrats, through words and action, must make clear that they stand with a struggling working class, a disappearing middle class, and millions of low-income Americans who today are barely surviving. They must make it clear that they are prepared to... Who does this sound like? Now, it's Bernie Sanders, and it's Democrats, and he's an independent, supposedly, and we know what the Democrats did to Bernie Sanders, but who does this sound like? Let me read this again. Democrats, through words and action, must make it clear that they stand with a struggling working class, a disappearing middle class, and millions of low-income Americans who today are barely surviving. They must make it clear they are prepared to boldly take on powerful corporate interests that have so much power in Washington and in state capitals across the country. Who does that sound like? Hint, it sounds like somebody we started this segment off with. Oliver Anthony. That sounds like rich men north of Richmond, doesn't it? Maybe Oliver's a Bernie bro. Now, look, Bernie caucuses and votes with the Democrat Party, so he doesn't mean it. I mean, you can't trust Bernie Sanders. But he says the right stuff. If Bernie Sanders meant what he just said there, he would stand with RFK Jr. He wouldn't stand with Biden. I mean, I trust RFK Jr. more on that stuff. What I just read from Bernie, that's RFK's platform. Then he should support his challenge. Joe Biden, for God's sakes, I mean, Joe Biden, the man is bought and paid for. It's now, this Viktor Shokin guy has surfaced. The Ukrainian, this is the guy that Biden tried to get fired while Hunter was on the board at Burisma. This Viktor Shokin guy was investigating Burisma at the time, and Biden, while he was still vice president, said, "Toss this guy. You got to fire him, or we're not going to give you the money." Shokin says, "Yeah, Burisma is dirty as it can be." He talked with Brian Kilmeade on Fox.
I do not want to deal in unproven facts, but my firm personal conviction is that, yes, this was the case. They were being bribed. The fact that Joe Biden gave away $1 billion in U.S. money in exchange for my dismissal, my firing, isn't that alone a case of corruption?
Democrats, through words and action, must make it clear they stand with a struggling working class, a disappearing middle class, and millions of low-income Americans who are barely surviving. They must make it clear they're prepared to take a bold stand against powerful corporate interests that have so much power in Washington and in state capitals across the country. And he's endorsing Joe Biden for another run. He didn't mean it. So I don't know, folks. That's the state of affairs at this hour. It's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, if you really back away, I know these two would not appreciate me saying this in the same sentence, putting these two people in the same sentence. If you back away, Sarah Palin and Bernie Sanders sound an awful lot more alike and a lot closer, ultimately, than most of the Republican and Democrats do to you and me. Sarah Palin and Bernie Sanders in speech sound closer to Oliver Anthony than most of the people running for high office these days, to me. Now, again, the sincerity of these people you'll have to evaluate on your own. And as far as Bernie Sanders goes, I can't trust him any further than I can throw him. Just saying, in terms of the messaging, isn't it interesting? Theirs is almost a populism on steroids. Suffice it to say, whatever the RNC and the Republicans at large are offering the base voter right now, guys like Oliver Anthony say, I don't want anything to do with them. Sarah Palin is saying, I don't want anything to do with them. I don't know where they are. I don't know where the RNC is, but they're not. Bernie Sanders telling the Democrats, I don't know where you people are, but you're not with the working class. They're both saying the same thing. Will the Republicans listen? It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years now. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell them about him, Bob.
Yeah, it's really a thrill for me to have both the dentists, my daughter and Dr. Jared Geddes. One of the things that I love about them both is when they don't have a patient in their chair, they're in my room watching what I do and trying to learn from me. And we hear enough about the new generation, and if they think they know everything and they don't want to work. And I've got two dentists who are really, really want to learn and really, really willing to work hard. And I enjoy learning from them. They brought some new skills and some new technologies to our office that will be great benefits to our patients. And so, if anything, I think that having them both there is going to expand and lengthen my career as opposed to shorten my career.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. You know, one of the most loathsome people you'll ever read is a guy I call Panties in a Bunch, Will Bunch, at the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's just a miserable lunatic, really. But what's interesting is, and I'm not really interested in reading what he wrote, other than just to point out that the thrust of what he wrote is exactly what I was saying. The country, here's the headline: journalism fails miserably at explaining what is really happening to America. And on that headline, I completely agree, as I've just laid out. Oliver Anthony has explained the Republican Party, those people on stage don't speak for me. I don't want these people appropriating my song. Bernie Sanders. Now, that's what people like Panties in a Bunch, this miserable left-wing lunatic at the Philadelphia Inquirer, will not write in this piece. Of course, the whole piece is all about how scary and dangerous and fascistic Republicans are, never pointing out that people like Bernie Sanders and RFK Jr. are saying the Democrat Party has completely abandoned them. Never pointing out the fact that the Democrat Party overwhelmingly believes that Joe Biden should not run again. He's too old. He's too compromised. They've said it. I mean, the polls say it. Gold Star families accuse Biden of covering up evidence that Kabul bombing was preventable. Masks back. Shots potentially back. Most Americans disapprove of Biden's handling of immigration and economy. Wide open borders. How about the crime? All weekend long in Philadelphia, more gun violence. You know, so it's funny that Panties in a Bunch at the Inquirer says that journalists fail miserably at explaining what is really happening to America. And, of course, his takeaway is only that journalists aren't talking about those scary Republicans and their agenda. That's what they're not telling. And that people like Vivek Ramaswamy or Trump's populism or Oliver Anthony's song, what is that doing? It's scary because it's fascism. Completely misappropriating what fascism is. Oliver Anthony's song is not about fascism. Vivek Ramaswamy is not about fascism. Donald Trump is not about fascism. It's a completely misappropriated word by the left. Fascism is about government control, centralized planning. Who wants control over your life? Which political movement wants control over your life? Who wants to tell you what to do? Who wants to tell you how to live? Who wants control over your finances, your gas stove? Who makes you feel less safe? Law and order candidates or those that would say, we're not prosecuting criminals? Those that would go after your Second Amendment rights? Or those who stand with your ability to protect yourself? Who's the fascist? How about this? Maryland court says parents can't, that is N''T. Maryland court says parents can't opt kids out of LGBTQ curriculum. This is one of the more chilling decisions that came down last week, if you didn't hear it. A federal court in Maryland decided Thursday parents can't opt their kids out of reading books with LGBTQ content in the Montgomery County, Maryland schools. Judge Deborah Boardman, Biden appointee, concludes that now listen to me, as people like Will Bunch write, the right and conservatives are the fascists, I want you to consider this verbiage from this judge, Judge Deborah Boardman. Parents asserted due process right to direct their children's upbringing by opting out of public school curriculum that conflicts with their religious views is not a fundamental right. Who's the fascist, Will? Who's the fascist? Is that fascism? It won't surprise you that's a Biden appointee, by the way, Deborah Boardman. Judge Deborah Boardman. So are you prepared, Will Bunch, panties in a bunch, who says that journalists are not chronicling the underlying fascism, the menacing fascism creeping in from the right? Who on the right, or whatever that means anymore, it's hard to even define what being on the right means anymore, but who on the right says you're not allowed, you don't have a fundamental right to your religious views? Who on the right says that children are the property of the state, like Phil Murphy in New Jersey does? I mean, look at our public schools alone. Look at the Department of Education, and look at what teachers' unions and these public schools are saying. They're saying that your children, parents, are ours, our property, and we will keep secrets from you. And if they have conversations with us that they don't want you to know, it is our job to keep them from you. They are now ours. They are wards of the state. And we as statists, teachers, and unions, we will keep these kids from you. And some states like Massachusetts and California are saying, we'll take your kids from you. We'll define you as abusers if you don't entertain their gender dysphoria. Who are the fascists? Will Bunch says, Oliver Anthony isn't the only one doing a better job discussing this. The news media better get comfortable talking about what is really happening. The anger. Working overtime hours for BS pay. The manipulation of that anger by demagogues like Trump. So naturally, when Trump talks about it, he's a demagogue and he's manipulating. I take that back. Panties in a Bunch does reference Bernie Sanders' speech. Said Sanders, in the United States and in fact around the world, support for the establishment and their institutions is in decline. People want change and change will come. The question is, what kind of change will it be? Not surprisingly, Sanders' important speech was barely mentioned in the media. Well, I mentioned it, and I'm glad Will Bunch did too. But see, the thing is, what Panties in a Bunch wants is more fascism, actually, not less. He wants more control over your kids. He wants your Second Amendment rights taken. He wants your First Amendment rights taken. He doesn't think you have a right to speak. He doesn't think you have a right to parent your children. He doesn't think you have a right to a disposable income. Guys like Will Bunch. Bunch is smart enough to recognize that there is a populist rage bubbling in this country. He's smart enough to recognize that. What he fears is that true liberty-loving constitutionalists will harness it. He fears that people in politics who will actually advocate for positions and policies that leave you and me alone, quite the opposite of fascism, but actually that you will be left alone, that federalism still matters, that states' rights still matter, that if you want to go live in a part of the country that says this state is not going to allow infanticide, this state is going to allow you to keep your Second Amendment rights. This state is going to secure its borders. This state, this community is going to protect its citizens. Try that in a small town. See, here where I choose to live, this is the way we're going to do it. See? Federalism. Will Bunch and leftists hate that. They call that fascism. I call that federalism. There's a difference. Federalism to them is fascism. They got it all the way. They got it completely backwards. They hate federalism. They want top-down central planning all out of D.C., total control over your life. And folks, that's fascism. And no true conservative, and everybody needs to get this straight, no true conservative advocates for fascism. I don't, and nobody I know that I admire, that I support, that I would vote for, supports control over your life or telling you what to do. Now, they may advocate for positions that mean in your community, local elected officials or state elected officials may choose to do things you don't like. For instance, the issue of abortion. But the beauty of this country is, if you're really unhappy with where you live, you can move to a place that allows you to live the life you want to lead, that's safer, that teaches your kids the way you want them taught, that allows you to abort all the babies you want. But if you want to live somewhere where life is valued, where property is protected, tax rates are lower, by all means move there. But no one that I would support, no conservative that I know, and everyone should understand this, supports the idea of Washington, D.C. demanding all 50 states and territories and every city and every community all uniformly behave the way Washington, D.C. wants. That's fascism, folks, and that is not what conservatism is. I don't think that's what Trump is. Trump has been one of the great deregulators in the history of the presidency, as a matter of fact. Trump has cut red tape. Trump has expanded states' rights. That's what conservatism is. That's what conservatism does. So don't get it mixed up. Don't let somebody lie to you and say, because Roe versus Wade was overturned, that that's fascism. Quite the opposite. Fascism is telling the entire country, you must be allowed to kill babies and no one in your community has anything to say about it. That's fascism. You got it backwards. You can move to California and kill babies after they've been born if you want. I think it's sick, but you can. And then there are other states that say, not here. We value life and will protect it. Now, if that makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry, ladies, but the truth of the matter is fascism is telling the entire country all babies at all stages of life can be slaughtered, and none of you will have anything to say about it because we've codified it into law at the federal level, even though there's nothing in the Constitution that says a word about it. That's fascism. What we're running into are a lot of leftists whose feelings are about things like abortion or transgender issues. Their feelings about it are one thing, and they want their feelings sanctioned, codified, locked into a universal nationwide standard that all of us must live under. And they call that freedom. See how perverse it is? I know most of this audience understands it, but we have young people that are checking in every now and again on this podcast and show that I think don't understand it or don't really know it, and they can get mixed up. And they can be convinced that when people say Republicans don't want women to have bodily autonomy, that's not true. Where the Constitution does not expressly lay out what should be the standard for everyone in this country, it is left up to the states. Federalism. That's all. That's all federalism is. So if Massachusetts and California want to abort babies after they're born, I mean, literally kill babies on the delivery room table after they've survived a failed abortion, Massachusetts and California can do it. It's grisly, but they can, and they do it. If Massachusetts and California want to take kids from parents who don't want them to go have gender mutilation surgeries and take hormones to inexorably alter their bodies for the rest of their lives, they can do it. Whereas other states say, you're not going to do that kind of butchery here. And the thing is, if you don't want to live in a country where certain states will go that far and other states won't allow their citizens to go that far, then you have to understand what you're advocating is fascism, not the other way around. It's not, you got it backwards. You people like panties in a bunch that throw fascism around. You got it backwards. And of course they know it. Journalism fails miserably at explaining what's really happening in America, what's happening to America. I agree with the headline. I totally disagree with the entirety of the column. He says we need to hear more from experts on authoritarian movements. We need journalists who will talk a lot less about who's up and who's down in the polls. Trump's plans to dismantle the democratic norms he calls the administrative state. Weaponize the criminal justice system, as if that's not happening now. You see, he's afraid of someone like Trump coming in and deregulating. The administrative state is something Will Bunch likes because he knows it's run by Democrats who will and are actively weaponizing it against you and me. He likes seeing Mark Houck in leg irons, rousted from his home in the early morning hours. Will Bunch likes that. That's not authoritarianism to him. That's the government, the heavy hand of government, kicking down the door of a Catholic man, a man of faith, and giving him the what for, roughing him up a little bit because he dares to stand outside abortion clinics and say, don't kill your baby, ladies. There's a different way. Will Bunch doesn't like that. Leftists just don't like that. They have no time for that kind of talk. And what does that make them? Authoritarians. Fascists. But they don't see it that way because, you see, they have the feels about it, and they're on the side of better angels because their feelings are that they're more just than the conservatives' point of view. They don't mind using the administrative state to bully you. And I hate to break it to them. They can have the feels and all the altruism in their hearts they want, but they're actually the fascists. They're comfortable using the administrative state to punish you and me and bring us into submission if we don't behave the way they want and speak the way they want. They're comfortable with the Department of Justice colluding with social media to keep you and me from talking, publishing certain stories, saying things that we want to say, because we shouldn't be allowed to say things that are anti-democratic norms, i.e., anti-government, anti-central planning, anti-authoritarian. They are the authoritarians. Never forget, the American left are the authoritarians, and they're trying to convince you that those of us who oppose them are. It's backwards, as I know you understand. 20 years in business. Congratulations to Mike Lindell and MyPillow. 80 million pillows sold over those 20 years. Can you believe that number? Well, Mike and his team at MyPillow, they want to thank each and every one of you for giving them such success over these many years, and now they want to celebrate by giving you the lowest price in MyPillow history. He told me that if you call or log on to MyPillow.com or call them today, you'll get a queen-size MyPillow to celebrate their 20 years in business for just $19.98. 20 years and just about $20 with tax. How about that? $19.98, that's it, for a queen-size MyPillow. Do you know the regular price of this thing is almost $50 more? So you're talking about a $50 discount. By the way, for the king size, you'll get it for just $10 more, $29.98. It's a huge sale. And incidentally, in addition to these pillows that are deeply discounted right now, you go to MyPillow.com and you'll get a discount using my name, Chris Podcast. Use that as your promo code, Chris Podcast. Click on the radio listener square and enter that. And you're talking about mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, sheets, and of course the pillows, so much more. You can try it on. If you've gone to MyPillow.com and you've thought to yourself, maybe it's a little expensive, now's the time. Celebrate 20 years with Mike Lindell. And know this, 10-year warranty. 10 years they warranty these things. So if they ever wear out or you have trouble, you can exchange for brand new. 60 days they let you take this stuff home, and if you don't like it, you can send it back for a full refund. So you got nothing to lose but a great night's sleep on MyPillow products. I've colleagues I've sent these my slippers to. They love them. Christine loves hers. The sheets are comfortable. The towels are super absorbent. Even old Dean loves his dog bed. And we drink my coffee here at the office every day. I just brewed some this morning. MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, all right? With that warranty fully intact, or call 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056, promo code Chris Podcast. Or MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, if you please to save. Let me give you an example of this is a lengthy email I got from Brad. Brad wrote me from West Texas over the weekend, Fast Eddie. I'm not going to read it all because it's paragraphs long. He's a nice guy, and it ends up that he enjoys the show. He'll listen to the show. He's a loyal listener to the show. He's not mad at me. He's just very frustrated with me, and because I like you to understand what your host is up against every day as we navigate this primary. He says, I have been a longtime listener of yours. You're one of my favorite shows. I appreciate you share your heart each day with your audience. Recently, especially around the debates and the spurious indictments of Trump, I'm compelled to write you once again. What is happening to Trump is a travesty. It's unconstitutional and un-American and evil. He is by far the most persecuted public figure in American history. I fully agree with you there. No one should have to endure what he has had to endure and is still enduring. He goes on to talk about the corruption of the Democrats. He says, it seems like everyone on your show and others are content to blame Democrats, but have very little to say about McCarthy, Ronna McDaniel, and Mitch McConnell. All Republicans seem to be able to do is tweet and fundraise off of the collective simmering outrage in the GOP electorate. How about finding people that will stand up and push for change? Is there no one on the Republican side that you have as regulars on your show that are willing to step up and put some public pressure on McCarthy? Have you tried to interview Chip Roy? How about Eric Schmidt on the Senate side? So that's the first bit of criticism. Do you agree with that, Fast Eddie? As the producer, executive producer of this effort, and as many guests have come on, do you think this show or guests on this show sound too rah-rah GOP or aren't doing enough to hold the GOP accountable?
I can't say definitively yes or no. There's things I like a lot that guests on this show say that I fully agree with. But there is an aspect of, yes, some guests have not pushed. Like, for example, I'm very, very angry that Kevin McCarthy reneged on the 87,000 IRS agents.
Yeah.
They pushed that through with the bill. So I'm angry about that.
But what does that mean? But he says there's nobody putting public pressure on them. What does that mean? Because does that mean that me and shows like mine aren't regularly beating up on McCarthy enough? Is that maybe what he means?
I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Now, do you think, how do I ask this? Do you think McCarthy will, I mean, for instance, I had a story today. Do I have it here? Hang on. Well, I thought I had it. But anyway, it was something to the effect of there are still some Republicans out there that are feeling a little wobbly about impeaching Biden. What do we do about that? What do I do about that? What do any of us do about it? I mean, if I tell you we should impeach Joe Biden, have I not been very clear that that's what we should do? Have I not said that repeatedly? Have I not asked, literally, why are we not moving heaven and earth right now to impeach Joe Biden? What are we waiting for? Have I not said it?
Nope. You've been 100% on that. Yep.
And if I then read a story today that says, yeah, there's some Republicans that aren't really sure. Like, what do I do? What do we do? It frustrates me. It infuriates me. I tell you about them. Should I scream a little louder? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what this looks like. I think a lot of people, how do I say this? I respect and appreciate very, very much that you have full faith and trust in this show in reaching people and perhaps maybe encouraging certain folks to do the right thing or give them backing to go do the right thing when maybe they feel they're out there alone. I appreciate the support that you give the show. I think it would be a mistake, though, to think that this show has the ability to pressure Kevin McCarthy to do anything. He doesn't care what this show has to say. The Republican Party doesn't care. Look, folks, this show reaches, lots and lots of people every day, and I have regularly been somewhat amazed that even the Republican nominee for president avoids it like the plague. Senate candidates avoid it like the plague. Because, You're just a little too... Yeah. You were fine to get to the dance. We've gone through this before. They need you in the primary. They want your fire and your passion in the primary. They want to play to that fire and passion in the primary. But once we get to the general, once we get to elected office, then it's, well, you guys, and you're just so... I have been hearing this since I was brand new to talk radio. I remember, I've told you this story before. I used to visit, I'd get invited to state capitals or whatever to kind of, meet in the office or whatever. They'd show me around the halls of the Capitol building. I remember a group of state reps once upon a time. I was touring the floor of the Capitol, and I was seated there, and one of the state reps was yucking it up with a couple of other state reps and introduced me as effectively a bloviating talk show host who didn't know what the hell he was talking about. Yeah, we're trying to teach him a thing or two. Ha, 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 ha. And he was a nice enough guy. He didn't necessarily mean it to be insulting, but that's the way I took it, and I believe that's what he meant. We, you, me, I don't know what we're talking about. They're the sophisticated ones. We're not. They need you to get there, but once they're there, let the adults handle the legislating, all right? You pea-brains don't understand the difficulty in negotiating the halls of legislation. So, shh. Thanks for your help. Now let mom and dad drive, is the attitude of the vast majority of these people. Now, all I can say to you is you would hope to vet these people and make them know that we're glad they want our support in primaries, but we hope they don't lose that when they get to wherever they're ultimately going. A lot of them do. A lot of them, they win a primary, they don't need us anymore. They start with this idea that, well, we really got to go win independents. We got to go win moderates. We got to, if we're going to win women, we can't be going on Stegall's show. Because, he says such indelicate, strident things. He's so doctrinaire. This is nuanced now. I'm not so sure impeaching Biden now is... So I know you get frustrated and you want guys like me to thunder and yell and scream in the hopes that will intimidate a guy like Kevin McCarthy. But all due respect, they don't need you and me anymore. They got to where they wanted to go. They have control of the House. And you say, well, they got to keep control of it. Yeah. And they'll be back to say all the right things in time. But right now, we're still over a year away. News cycles change. Memories get short. There'll be 300 different events that make the roller coaster of news and emotion go up and down and up and down. And so by the time we get to the next election, you think you and I are going to be sitting around talking about how mad we are that the Republicans don't move fast enough on impeaching Biden? Seriously, I'm asking you. Do you think that you and I are going to go, you know what, those sons of... I'm not voting for them because they didn't make good on impeaching Biden. No. They count on you being right back where you were next fall, going, well, we can't have those SOBs on the Democrat side, so we'll vote Republican again. And we'll do this again. This has been the cyclical pattern for as long as I've been in this. So, I mean, all due respect, holding them accountable has nothing to do with me. That's you. I mean, that's on you. I'm one guy with one vote. Yes, I have a radio show, but they got from you and me what they need. They got the votes. They got the primary. Once the primary's sewn up, they're not so interested in me. They're not afraid of you and me. I don't know how else to say it. Does that make sense, Fast Eddie?
Oh, it makes total sense. From this side of it, absolutely.
So when I get these notes, hold them accountable, I say, how? If you, what? I mean, what does that look like? Me screaming a little louder? Look, they're more afraid of you, organized, than they are me. They're not afraid of me. Anyway, he goes on to talk about Trump. He goes on to talk about the Trump administration. What makes you think that the Trump administration would be any better than the one that we had last time. He didn't finish the wall. Didn't hold Hillary Clinton or others accountable. Took no action cleaning out the swamp. He did open up the country for fracking and made us energy independent and a net exporter of energy, but that wasn't built to be long-lasting and was swept away the first few months of the Biden administration. What is Trump doing about election integrity? Well, look, as far as election integrity goes, I don't know what any of them are doing about election integrity. What's Ron DeSantis doing about election integrity? I mean, I'd ask that of the Republican field at large. He goes on to say Trump attacked DeSantis a few days before his reelection in Florida 2022, has thrown most of his trusted advisors under the bus because they don't treat him as an idol. I just don't understand how you can be encouraged to vote for him when he has given no reason to think he will do anything different. He can't get past navel-gazing and is making everything about himself. It's embarrassing and terrible for the future of the country, not to mention he will immediately be a lame duck first day in office, whereas DeSantis can have 8 full years to enact change and won't get in his own way. At this point, do you not see the Democrats are doing all this to drive up Trump's popularity so much that he wins the primary and then they start removing him from ballots? There's nothing these people won't do. Fast Eddie, have I not said that there is a working theory that the Democrats want to elect Donald Trump because they think he's the most easily beaten? Have I not said that repeatedly?
Over and over. I think before you talk about DeSantis v. Trump, every time you mention that, for sure.
I'm not naive to any of this. You're not telling me anything. All due respect, Brad. And by the way, he goes on to say, I'm going to continue to listen. I like your show. We're not at odds here, Brad. You're a DeSantis guy. You want to move on from Trump. I respect. You're not saying it. I hope you feel better that you got it out. I hope you feel better that I read it and acknowledged that you sent it to me. I hear you. I'm one man. And I have said repeatedly that however this primary shakes out, I am 100% behind who the voters in the party end up making their nominee. 100%. Unless it's Chris Christie or Asa Hutchinson. Then I'll have to, I don't know, write in. Maybe myself. Short of those two men being selected, I would eagerly support any of the rest of this field and will advocate vociferously for them if they become the nominee. I'm not asking for people to show loyalty to me in my primary support, my stated reasons for support of Donald Trump. I'm not asking for loyalty. I'm not asking for fealty here. I'm not demanding anybody think like me. I've been honest with you so that I don't have to pretend that I don't have an opinion. I don't like that. That felt dishonest. So I could no longer be dishonest and pretend I don't have an opinion in this primary. I readily admit and acknowledge how rigged and how aggressive this system looks against Trump. I readily admit and acknowledge how hated Donald Trump is. I readily admit and acknowledge that the GOP has a voter registration, a voter turnout, a ballot harvesting problem. All of those things I stipulate. But let me just say to you, diplomatically, gently, with respect, if you think Ron DeSantis has any less of any of those problems, you are also living in a fiction. So pick Ron DeSantis. I'll vote for Ron DeSantis. I'm excited about Ron DeSantis. I see no evidence that Ron DeSantis has any more national plan for ballot harvesting in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin than Donald Trump does right now. I've not heard it. Maybe it exists. I have no evidence or reason to believe that Ron DeSantis isn't every bit as hated as Donald Trump, if not more, once they fully get cranking, and they already have. The Klansmen who won't allow people to say gay in Florida. Okay, so please don't tell me that Ron DeSantis is the more palatable Republican to the electorate. He's not. I don't believe it. Now, having said all that, may the best man win. But don't. I wish I had the kind of power that some people think I do. I do not wake up in the morning thinking to myself, I am going to change the electorate. That's not my job. My job is to come here and give you my opinion of the news and politics of the day. You can take it or leave it. I do not wake up every day saying, my voice will singularly move mountains and sway the electorate. I've never thought that of this show. I'm not starting now. I'm one man with one opinion, and if the electorate goes a different direction than my opinion, I respect that and I defer. That's all. So may the best man win. I hope does that sound fair and clear and reasonable, Fast Eddie?
Chris, it's crystal clear and it's reasonable. And if you spend any time in the YouTube space or the Twitter space and conservative, like Chris, I really appreciate the way you're explaining what is happening. Okay. Like if there are some people who believe that, yes, if Trump gets elected, then we lose. If you're a Trump person and you're living on Twitter and YouTube and following people that you follow, all you're being told is that can't happen.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Here, you're hearing that it could, that very well could happen. We saw it, sadly, with Doug Mastriano happen. So is that something that could possibly happen? It is. I don't think anywhere you're getting this kind of analysis. So, Chris, you're being fair to both sides. I am the same as you. I will vote for either of these men. I don't care. I want to win.
That's right. And I readily admit and acknowledge that both of them could get crushed. Okay? I don't know how else to say it. I told you about my friend who's already such a pessimist out of the gate. He thinks this is all wasted air. He doesn't think either one of them can win. I mean, and if I thought that, well, I don't know. Go get a job with the Department of Transportation or something. Because I'm go get a government job and just cash out. Because I wouldn't have anything new to say to you. I don't believe it's that dire yet, but there are people that do. The thing is, I just don't believe that DeSantis is head and shoulders different and better than Trump in that sense. You may have your reasons to think he's better at governing than Trump, and I respect it totally. But when you talk about electability, this is where I will part with those of you that tell yourselves that Ron DeSantis is not going to face the buzzsaw of hatred that Trump does. I think you live in a fiction that you really ought to snap out of.
The Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.